They called it Coral Vista Marine Park, a shimmering oasis of blue and white perched on the Florida coastline. A place where families came to witness the magic of the ocean, to be enchanted by the intelligence of dolphins, and to believe just, for a little while, in a world where humans and animals danced as one. But behind the smiles, beneath the meticulously maintained facade, a different story was unfolding. A story of relentless pressure, of ignored warnings, and of a bond pushed to its breaking point. At the heart of this story are two souls, Sophie, Lane, a dedicated marine mammal trainer, and Aries, a bottlenose dolphin celebrated for her grace and charisma. For nearly a decade, they had been partners, their connection forged in the shared language of clicks, whistles, and synchronized movements. Sophie, with her sun-streaked hair and kind eyes, wasn't just a trainer. She was Aries' guardian, her advocate within the often unyielding world of marine park entertainment. She understood Aries' subtle cues, the slight tilt of her head, the almost imperceptible sigh that spoke volumes to those who knew her best. Where others saw a performing animal, Sophie saw a sentient being, capable of joy, of sorrow, and of exhaustion. Aries had been a star since adolescence. Recruited from another facility, she quickly mastered the complex routines that delighted audiences show after show. The high leaps, the synchronized swims, the intricate interactions with her trainers. It all came naturally to Aries, at least at first. As the years passed, however, the relentless schedule began to take its toll. 11 shows a week, the deafening music, the blinding lights, the constant pressure to perform perfectly. It chipped away at Aries' natural exuberance. Sophie noticed the subtle shifts in Aries' behavior, the lengthening pauses between tricks, the slight tremor in her movements, the way her once bright eyes seemed to lose their spark. The bond between Sophie and Aries was undeniable. They were more than just trainer and animal. They were confidants, each attuned to the other's needs and emotions. Sophie spent countless hours observing Aries, studying her behavior, and meticulously documenting any changes or concerns in her daily reports. She noticed Aries' appetite waning, her playful energy replaced by a quiet lethargy. The once effortless leaps now required visible effort, and Aries often lingered at the surface of the tank, seemingly reluctant to fully engage in the performance. Sophie's concerns were growing, but her voice within the park's rigid hierarchy was often drowned out by the demands of profit and performance. Victor Hale, the park's operations manager, was a man driven by numbers and bottom lines. He saw Aries as an asset, a star attraction whose performance was essential to the park's financial success. He dismissed Sophie's concerns as mere sentimentality, a trainer's over-attachment to her animal. "She's swimming, isn't she?" he'd often retort, his eyes fixed on his data. "If she's still swimming, she's still performing." Sophie tried to reason with him, to explain the physical and emotional toll the relentless schedule was taking on Aries. She presented her documented observations, the subtle cues indicating Aries' increasing fatigue, her reluctance to participate in certain routines. But Victor remained unmoved, his focus solely on maintaining the park's revenue stream. He emphasized the importance of sold-out shows, the contractual obligations to sponsors, and the need to maintain Coral Vista's reputation as a premier marine entertainment destination. The park's management actively discouraged any expression of concern for the animals' well-being. Trainers who voiced complaints were often reassigned to less desirable roles, their concerns dismissed or outright ignored. Sophie had witnessed this firsthand, the subtle pressure to conform, the unspoken threat of professional repercussions for those who dared to challenge the status quo. She knew that speaking out too forcefully could jeopardize her own career, but she couldn't ignore Ares' suffering. The dolphin's well-being was paramount. She documented everything, every missed cue, every sign of fatigue, every indication that Ares was struggling. She filed detailed reports, meticulously outlining her observations and requesting a reduction in Ares' workload. But her reports seemed to disappear into a bureaucratic black hole, her requests unanswered, her concerns dismissed. The park's management, driven by profit and unwilling to disrupt the lucrative performance schedule, chose to ignore the warning signs, to prioritize spectacle over the well-being of their star performer. One evening, Sophie stayed late at the park, drawn to Ares' tank by an invisible thread of worry. The park was quiet, the usual cacophony of music and cheering replaced by an eerie silence. She knelt by the water's edge, watching Ares glide listlessly through the water. The dolphin's breathing was shallow, her movements sluggish. Sophie reached out, gently stroking Ares' rostrum. The dolphin responded with a soft clicking sound, a sound that seemed to convey a deep weariness. "I'm sorry, Ares," Sophie whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm trying, but they're not listening." That night, Ares refused her final feeding. This was unusual. She lay motionless at the surface of the tank, her dorsal fin drooping slightly, a telltale sign of distress. Sophie felt a wave of panic wash over her. She knew something was terribly wrong. She immediately contacted the on-call veterinarian, Dr. Evans, describing Ares' condition with urgent concern. Dr. Evans promised to examine Ares the following morning. But Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. She left a note in Victor Hale's inbox, a desperate plea to pull Ares from the next day's lineup. She detailed her concerns, emphasizing the seriousness of Ares' condition and the potential risks of forcing her to perform. But Sophie knew, deep down, that her plea would likely go unheeded. The show must go on. That was the mantra at Coral Vista, regardless of the cost. In the stillness of the night, under the cold glare of the stadium lights, a tragedy was brewing. A tragedy that Sophie desperately tried to avert, but one that seemed destined to unfold. The ocean dream was crumbling, and no one, it seemed, was listening to the cries for help. The stage was set for a disaster. The music swelled, a triumphant fanfare meant to mask the growing tension behind the scenes. Sophie took her place on the platform, forcing a smile that felt as brittle as thin ice. Ares surfaced, breaching with a practiced grace that belied the weariness in her eyes. This was it, the finale, the culmination of years of training, thousands of performances, and a bond that, despite everything, still flickered with a fragile light. But something was off. Terribly, irrevocably off. Ares' movements were sluggish, almost hesitant. The playful nips and nudges that usually preceded the show were absent, replaced by a disconcerting stillness. Sophie tried to reassure herself. Maybe it was just nerves. Maybe the stimulant was still working, masking a deeper problem. But deep down, she knew this wasn't Ares, not the Ares she knew, the Ares she loved. The routine began, the jumps, the spins, the synchronized swims. Each movement felt strained, forced. Ares missed a cue during the hoop jump, nearly clipping the edge. The audience murmured, a ripple of unease spreading through the stands. Sophie compensated, subtly guiding Ares through the sequence, her voice calm and reassuring through the headset. Good girl, Aries, just like we practiced. But the lies tasted like ash in her mouth. This wasn't practice. This was survival. The trust glide was next. Their signature move. The moment where human and animal became one, gliding effortlessly through the water, a testament to their extraordinary connection. Sophie extended her hand, giving the signal, and that's when it happened. Aries didn't respond. Instead, she veered off course, circling the tank with increasing speed. Her tail slapped the water, a sharp, thunderous crack that echoed through the stunned silence. The playful clicks and whistles were gone, replaced by a series of low, guttural vocalizations that Sophie had never heard before. They weren't sounds of joy, they were sounds of distress, of fear, of something breaking. Sophie hesitated, pulling back her hand. Something primal, instinctual, screamed at her to retreat, to get out of the water, to run. But years of training, years of loyalty, held her rooted to the spot. She had to reach Aries. She had to understand. Then, the lunge. Not the graceful, soaring leap that had captivated audiences for years. This was something different, something desperate. Aries launched herself from the water with a force that sent shockwaves through the platform. Her body twisted awkwardly in the air, losing all sense of elegance. She landed sideways, a jarring splash that drenched the front rows and silenced the crowd completely. Sophie stumbled backward, barely managing to keep her balance. She knelt at the edge of the pool, scanning the water, her heart pounding in her chest. Aries, what is it, girl? What's wrong? Aries remained submerged for what felt like an eternity. Then, she surged upwards with terrifying speed, slamming against the edge of the platform with a sickening thud. Her rostrum struck Sophie in the ribs, knocking the breath from her lungs. Before Sophie could react, before the safety team could intervene, Aries opened her mouth and clamped down on Sophie's arm. Not a playful nip, not a gentle tug. This was a full-fledged bite, fueled by a raw, untamed energy that Sophie had never witnessed before. The screams started then. A collective gasp of horror from the audience as Sophie was dragged into the water. The world turned upside down, a swirling vortex of blue and white and red. Chaos erupted beneath the surface. Aries thrashed, pulling Sophie deeper and deeper. The movements were frantic, uncontrolled, driven by something beyond comprehension. Sophie fought back, her mind racing. She kicked, she struggled, she tried to apply the calming techniques she had learned over years of training. Nothing worked. Aries was lost, trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Above the surface, panic reigned. Trainers shouted emergency codes. Red flags were raised. Underwater speakers blared a deafening alarm. Barriers were lowered, but Aries was beyond reach. Deaf to the world outside her own desperate struggle. Time stretched, distorted. Minutes felt like hours. Sophie's lungs burned, her vision blurred. She could feel Aris's grip tightening, the pressure unbearable. She tried to focus, to connect with the Dolphin, to find some spark of recognition in her eyes. But there was only confusion, fear, and a desperate, primal need to escape. Then, darkness. Aries surfaced, momentarily releasing Sophie's arm. Blood swirled around them, staining the water a sickening crimson. The screams from the audience intensified, a cacophony of terror and disbelief. Parents shielded their children's eyes, desperately trying to erase the image of the unfolding horror, but it was too late. The image was seared into their minds, a testament to the fragility of the illusion they had come to witness. Aries dove again, pulling Sophie beneath the surface for the final time. There was no struggle now, only a chilling stillness. By the time the rescue team reached the pool, it was over. Ares had released Sophie, who floated motionless, her wetsuit torn, her face pale and lifeless. The medical team pulled her from the water, desperately performing CPR, but there was no response. Sophie Lane was pronounced dead at 11:19 a.m. 7 minutes. That's all it took to shatter a dream, to transform a partnership into a tragedy, to silence a voice that had dedicated her life to the voiceless. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across the internet. Trainer killed during Dolphin show. Tragedy at Coral Vista Marine Park. Star Dolphin turns deadly. But the truth was far more complex, far more insidious. It wasn't just a rogue dolphin attack. It was the culmination of negligence, greed, and a systemic disregard for the well-being of both animals and trainers. It was the price of forcing nature to conform to the demands of entertainment. Backstage, the park descended into chaos. Performances were cancelled. Staff stood in stunned silence, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. Sophie's locker remained untouched, a shrine to a life cut short. Victor Hale, the operations manager, held a press conference, his voice choked with practiced sorrow. He read from a prepared statement, expressing condolences to Sophie's family and praising her dedication to the park. He made no mention of the stimulant, no mention of the ignored warnings, no mention of the reports Sophie had filed detailing Eris's declining health. But the truth had a way of surfacing. A junior handler, risking their own career, anonymously leaked information about Sophie's pleas to pull Ares from the show, about her objections to the injection, about Victor's blatant disregard for her concerns. Then came the security footage, grainy and time-stamped, showing Victor ordering the vet to administer the stimulant. The public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Social media erupted with hashtags demanding justice for Sophie and freedom for Ares. Protests were organized. Outside the park gates, former trainers came forward with their own stories of ignored warnings and dangerous practices. The pressure mounted. Investigations were launched. Government agencies demanded transparency. Animal welfare organizations called for the park's closure. The world was watching, and the truth could no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, Ares remained in isolation, refusing food, unresponsive to human contact. She floated listlessly in the tank, her eyes vacant, her spirit broken. The dolphin, who had once captivated audiences with her grace and intelligence, was now a shadow of her former self. A victim of the same system that had claimed Sophie's life. The aftermath of Sophie Lane's death sent shockwaves far beyond the confines of Coral Vista Marine Park. The initial outrage, fueled by leaked footage and whistleblower accounts, quickly morphed into a sustained roar. Social media exploded with the hashtag Justice for Sophie, trending globally within hours. Images of Sophie, smiling and interacting with Ares, were juxtaposed with the horrifying scene of the attack, a stark reminder of the tragedy's brutal reality. Petitions demanding the park's closure amassed millions of signatures. Protests erupted outside the gates, fueled by animal rights activists, former employees, and ordinary citizens horrified by the events. The once pristine image of Coral Vista crumbled under the weight of public condemnation. The official investigations, launched by the Department of Wildlife Welfare, painted a damning picture. Internal documents revealed a culture of prioritizing profit over animal welfare. Sophie's repeated concerns about Eris's declining health, meticulously documented in her reports, had been systematically ignored. The park's emphasis on maximizing show schedules, even at the expense of the animals' well-being, was laid bare. The investigation into Eris's pre-show treatment revealed even more disturbing details. The stimulant injected into the Dolphin, identified as a non-approved amphetamine derivative, was intended to mask her fatigue and force her through the performance. This revelation ignited further fury, transforming public opinion from outrage to active condemnation of Coral Vista and its management. Victor Hale, the park's operations manager, became the central figure of blame. The leaked security footage, showing him ordering the injection, coupled with damning testimony from former staff, painted him as a ruthless executive willing to sacrifice animal welfare for financial gain. He was immediately placed on administrative leave, but the calls for his prosecution grew louder each day. Eventually, he was charged with multiple counts of animal endangerment and reckless endangerment, facing the possibility of jail time. The investigation also triggered a wider debate about the ethics of keeping marine mammals in captivity. Animal welfare organizations seized the opportunity to advocate for the closure of marine parks and the establishment of ocean sanctuaries where these intelligent creatures could live in a more natural environment. Eris's fate became another focal point of the public outcry. Confined to a solitary tank, she exhibited signs of severe distress, refusing food, displaying erratic behavior, and seemingly unresponsive to human interaction. She became a symbol of the trauma inflicted by captivity. Under intense public pressure, Coral Vista announced its decision to relocate Ares to a specialized ocean sanctuary, a move seen by many as a belated attempt to salvage its reputation. Sophie Lane's death, however, transcended the specific circumstances of the Coral Vista tragedy. It became a catalyst for systemic change within the animal entertainment industry. Lawmakers introduced legislation aimed at strengthening animal welfare regulations, increasing transparency in marine parks, and prohibiting the use of harmful stimulants. The Sophie Lane Act, as it was unofficially dubbed, aimed to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Sophie's family, devastated by their loss, channeled their grief into activism. They established the Sophie Lane Memorial Foundation, dedicated to promoting ethical treatment of animals in entertainment and advocating for stronger animal welfare laws. They became vocal advocates for Eris's well-being and worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the plight of captive marine mammals. Their unwavering commitment to Sophie's legacy inspired countless others to join their cause. Former marine park trainers, emboldened by Sophie's story and the growing public support, began to speak out about their experiences. They revealed a pattern of abuse, neglect, and exploitation within the industry, often hidden behind a facade of entertainment and education. Their testimonies, shared in documentaries and news reports, exposed the dark underbelly of marine animal shows, shattering the illusion of harmony between humans and animals. The economic consequences for Coral Vista were devastating. Attendance plummeted, sponsors withdrew their support, and the park faced mounting legal fees and potential fines. The once thriving entertainment complex became a shadow of its former self, a stark reminder of the price of prioritizing profit over compassion. Ultimately, Coral Vista Marine Park declared bankruptcy and closed its doors permanently, a symbolic victory for animal rights advocates. But perhaps the most profound impact of Sophie Lane's death was the shift in public perception. The romanticized image of marine animal shows, once celebrated as family-friendly entertainment, was replaced by a more critical and informed perspective. People began to question the ethics of keeping highly intelligent and social animals in confined spaces, forcing them to perform unnatural behaviors for human amusement. The conversation shifted from entertainment to exploitation, from spectacle to suffering. Sophie Lane's legacy extends far beyond the closure of a marine park or the passage of new laws. It lives on in the growing awareness of animal sentience, the increasing demand for ethical treatment, and the unwavering commitment to creating a more compassionate world for all creatures. Her tragic death served as a wake-up call, prompting a fundamental re-evaluation of our relationship with the natural world and the responsibilities we bear towards the animals we share it with. Her final dive became a symbol of sacrifice, a call for systemic change, and a lasting testament to the power of love and compassion in the face of exploitation and cruelty.